A quiet but profound shift is happening across East Asia. Citizens from Tokyo to Taipei, from Seoul to Shanghai, are looking at their core institutions with growing skepticism. Governments, corporations, healthcare systems, and the media once stood as pillars of stability. Today, many see them as fragile or even self-serving. This change is not happening overnight. It is the result of years of broken promises, scandals, and a growing gap between the leaders and the elite. The very fabric that holds these societies together is being tested in new and challenging ways. For decades, East Asia was a story of remarkable success. Economic miracles lifted millions out of poverty. A key ingredient in this success was a high degree of social trust. But that foundational belief is now wavering. Understanding this erosion of trust is crucial. It helps explain many of the headlines we see coming from the region. The digital age has made people more aware than ever before. Information and misinformation spreads in an instant. As people become more informed, they also become more critical. This essay will explore the landscape of declining trust across East Asia. We will examine why this is happening and what it means for the future. How can these societies begin to rebuild the essential bonds of trust that are necessary for any nation to thrive in the 21st century? Trust is the invisible glue that holds a society together. It is the belief that others will act in a predictable and reliable way. When we have trust, society functions smoothly. We can engage in business with strangers, knowing that contracts will be honored. Without this fundamental trust, every interaction becomes more difficult, more costly, and more fraught with suspicion. High-trust societies tend to be more prosperous and stable. People are more willing to cooperate with one another. They invest in the future because they believe in the stability of their institutions. Conversely, when trust collapses, the consequences can be severe. Economic activity slows down as people become wary of investing or spending. Social fragmentation increases as different groups retreat into their own bubbles, viewing others with suspicion. Political polarization deepens, making compromise and effective governance nearly impossible. The decline in institutional trust threatens to undo decades of progress. Rebuilding this trust is not just a matter of public relations, it is a matter of national survival and well-being. The stakes are incredibly high. Across East Asia, public faith in government has been shaken by a series of scandals and perceived failures. In Japan, a long period of economic stagnation has taken its toll. Citizens see a political class that seems disconnected from their daily struggles. The government's initially slow response to the COVID-19 pandemic further damaged public confidence. South Korea presents a dramatic example of how quickly trust can be lost. The country has been rocked by high-profile political scandals. In mainland China, the nature of trust is different but just as fragile. The government's heavy-handed initial cover-up of the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan created a rare and visible crack in its authority. This crisis of confidence is not just about specific policies or scandals. Many citizens feel that their governments are no longer responsive to their needs. As a result, people are disengaging from the political process or turning to more populist and extreme voices. The COVID-19 pandemic was the ultimate stress test for healthcare systems worldwide, and East Asia was no exception. In the early days, countries like Taiwan and South Korea were praised for their effective responses. However, as the pandemic dragged on, new challenges emerged that began to chip away at that confidence. In Japan, the healthcare system appeared slow and bureaucratic. The country was surprisingly slow to roll out its vaccination program. China's experience was one of dramatic extremes. The government's zero-COVID policy was initially presented as a triumph. However, the policy's implementation became increasingly brutal and unsustainable. The pandemic also exposed inequalities within healthcare systems. While many people still trust their individual doctors and nurses, their faith in the overall healthcare administration has been significantly weakened. In East Asia, large corporations have long been viewed as national champions. Companies like Toyota, Samsung, and Huawei were symbols of national pride and economic power. However, that relationship is becoming increasingly strained. A series of scandals has led to a growing sense of mistrust toward these corporate giants. In South Korea, the powerful family-run conglomerates known as chaebol have been at the center of this shift. Japan has also seen its share of corporate scandals that have tarnished the reputation of its business sector. In China, the relationship between the public and corporations is complicated by the heavy hand of the state. Citizens are growing more wary of issues like data privacy and the immense power these tech giants wield. State-owned enterprises are often seen as inefficient and privileged. The public is increasingly skeptical of corporate motives and their impact on society. The media landscape in East Asia is undergoing a dramatic transformation, affecting public trust. The rise of the internet and social media has created an explosion of new information sources. While this has democratized the flow of information, it has also made it much harder for people to distinguish between fact and fiction. In more democratic societies like South Korea and Taiwan, the media has become highly polarized. Consumers tend to choose media sources that confirm their existing beliefs, reinforcing their biases. In mainland China, the media is tightly controlled by the state. Many citizens are deeply skeptical of official news sources. They turn to social media and private messaging apps to find alternative information. The result across the region is a crisis of information. When people cannot trust the media, they lose a vital tool for holding power to account. This breakdown of trust in the media has serious consequences for democracy, public health, and social stability. The erosion of media trust is not just a media problem, it is a problem for all of society. Hong Kong and Taiwan face unique and intense crises of trust, largely shaped by their relationship with mainland China. In Hong Kong, the erosion of trust has been dramatic and swift. The one country, two systems framework has been systematically dismantled by Beijing. The massive pro-democracy protests in 2019 were a powerful expression of this broken trust. The subsequent imposition of the national security law in 2020 was a final, decisive blow. For many Hong Kongers, every institution is now suspect. Taiwan's crisis of trust is also deeply connected to Beijing, but it manifests differently. The primary issue is the existential threat posed by the Chinese government. This external threat has strengthened internal cohesion and trust in Taiwan's democratic institutions. However, it has also made the island a major target for disinformation campaigns. These disinformation efforts target elections, public health issues, and social debates. The crises in both Hong Kong and Taiwan show how geopolitical forces can accelerate and intensify the erosion of institutional trust. Rebuilding trust is a slow and difficult process. For East Asian societies to reverse the current trend, their institutions must embark on a long-term project of fundamental reform. This process must begin with a genuine commitment to transparency and accountability. Governments, corporations, and other institutions must open themselves up to public scrutiny. For governments, this means tackling corruption head-on. It requires strengthening independent judicial systems and anti-corruption agencies. Furthermore, governments must become more responsive to the needs of their citizens. Corporations also have a crucial role to play. They must move beyond a narrow focus on shareholder value and embrace a broader sense of social responsibility. When companies demonstrate that they are good citizens, they can begin to win back the public's confidence. Finally, fostering a healthy information ecosystem is vital. This requires supporting independent, high-quality journalism that can act as a watchdog on power. Rebuilding trust is not a task for any single actor. It requires a concerted effort from all parts of society. A new social contract based on shared values of integrity, fairness, and a commitment to the common good is essential. The erosion of institutional trust is one of the most significant and challenging undercurrents shaping modern East Asia. It is a quiet crisis, but one with loud consequences. This is more than just fleeting public dissatisfaction. It is a fundamental questioning of the legitimacy and competence of the systems that guided the region through decades of unprecedented growth and stability. The sources of this mistrust are varied and deep. They include persistent political corruption, corporate scandals, and the immense pressures of the COVID-19 pandemic. The digital revolution has acted as a powerful accelerant, spreading information and outrage at lightning speed. The result is a more skeptical, more demanding, and more fragmented public. The implications of this trend are profound. Low-trust societies are less resilient. They struggle to address long-term challenges like climate change, aging populations, and economic inequality. The path forward is neither short nor easy. It requires a deep and sustained commitment to reform. Ultimately, the future of East Asia will be forged in trust, or in the lack of it. The stability and prosperity of millions depend on its outcome.